The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the 42nd floor like nature's own judgment, each drop a reminder of how far Marcus Wellington had fallen. Just 12 hours ago, he'd been untouchably CEO of Wellington Industries, master of a billion-dollar empire, the golden boy who'd graced the covers of Forbes and Fortune. Now he sat alone in his corner office, staring at the FBI seizure notice taped to his mahogany desk, his company's assets frozen, his bank accounts emptied, his reputation destroyed by a single whistleblower's revelation about accounting fraud he'd never even known existed. The elevator dinged softly in the hallway outside, but Marcus didn't look up. Everyone had abandoned ship hours ago. Board members, executives, even his personal assistant who'd worked beside him for 8 years. The rats had fled, leaving him to sink with what remained of his corporate Titanic. His phone had been buzzing relentlessly until he'd finally turned it off, unable to bear another reporter's question or another friend's sudden unavailability. "Mr. Wellington?" The voice was gentle, unfamiliar. Marcus lifted his head to see a man in his early 40s standing in the doorway, wearing the navy blue uniform of the building's janitorial staff. His name tag read Carlos, and despite the late hour, his dark eyes held no judgment, only concern. "Buildings being locked down for the night," Carlos said, stepping into the office with his cleaning cart. "Security asked me to make sure everyone was out." Marcus let out a hollow laugh. "Don't worry about me. I'll be gone soon enough. Nowhere left to go anyway." His voice cracked on the last word, the reality of his situation hitting him like a physical blow. His penthouse was already sealed by federal agents, his cars impounded, his credit cards frozen. He'd checked his wallet earlier at $37 in cash and a Metro card with 2 rides left. Carlos studied him for a long moment, then began emptying the trash cans with practiced efficiency. "You know," he said conversationally, "I've been cleaning these offices for 6 years. Seen a lot of people come and go. But you always said good morning. Asked about my daughter Sophia when she was sick last year. Most folks up here, they look right through people like me." The words stung because they were true. Marcus had prided himself on remembering names, on treating everyone with respect regardless of their position. It was something his father had taught him before the old man died, a lesson that had somehow survived the corrupting influence of wealth and power. "Fat lot of good it does me now," Marcus muttered, but there was no bitterness in it, only exhaustion. Carlos finished his cleaning and paused by the door. When he spoke again, his voice was firm, decided. "You're coming with me." Marcus looked up, startled. "What? You heard me. You're coming with me." "Can't leave you here like this." "Carlos, I appreciate the sentiment. Buta, no buts." Carlos's tone brooked no argument. "My mama always said you don't leave a man when he's down, especially not a good man. And you, despite what they're saying on the news, you're a good man. I seen it." 15 minutes later, Marcus found himself in the passenger seat of Carlos's 15-year-old Honda Civic, watching the city lights blur past through rain-streaked windows. The car smelled like pine air freshener and hard work, a stark contrast to his usual leather-seated BMW. Carlos drove with careful precision through the late-night traffic, occasionally glancing over at his unexpected passenger. "Where are we going?" Marcus finally asked. "Home," Carlos replied simply. "My place in Queens. Nothing fancy, but it's warm and dry." The apartment was a modest 2-bedroom on the 3rd floor of a walk-up building, but it radiated the kind of warmth that money couldn't buy. Family photos covered every surface. Children's artwork decorated the refrigerator, and the smell of homemade soup lingered in the air. A teenage girl looked up from her homework at the kitchen table as they entered. "Papi, who's this?" "Sophia, this is Mr. Wellington. He's going to stay with us tonight." Carlos hung up their coats and moved to the stove, stirring a pot that had clearly been simmering for hours. "Mr. Wellington, this is my daughter Sophia. She's 16, honor student, wants to be a doctor." Sophia studied Marcus with intelligent eyes that reminded him of her father's. "You're that CEO guy from the news, aren't you? The one whose company got shut down?" "Sophia," Carlos warned gently. "It's okay," Marcus said, surprised by how much the girl's direct gaze steadied him. "Yes, that's me." "Must suck," she said with teenage bluntness. "But Papi always says when life knocks you down, you get back up and help the next person who falls." Over bowls of Carlos's incredible chicken soup, Marcus learned about their life. Carlos had come to New York 15 years ago with nothing but determination and a promise to send for his wife and infant daughter once he'd established himself. Maria had died in a car accident 3 years later, before they could reunite, leaving Carlos to raise Sophia alone while working double shifts to pay for her education and send money to his elderly parents back in Guatemala. "I used to be angry," Carlos admitted as Sophia disappeared into her room to finish her homework. "Angry at God, at life, at everyone who seemed to have it easier." But anger's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to get sick. Had to let it go for Sophia's sake. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the weight of Marcus's catastrophe settling around them like a familiar coat. Finally, Carlos spoke again. "What are you going to do now?" Marcus shook his head. "I honestly don't know. The lawyers say I might avoid prison since I can prove I didn't know about the fraud, but everything else is gone. 20 years of building something, and it's just gone. Maybe that's not such a bad thing." Marcus stared at him. "How can you say that?" Carlos leaned back in his chair, choosing his words carefully. "When I first came here, I had this dream of getting rich, buying a big house, fancy cars. Thought that would make me happy, make me successful. But you know what I learned? Success isn't what you accumulate, it's what you contribute. It's Sophia getting accepted to Columbia on scholarship next year. It's Mrs. Rodriguez upstairs telling me I'm like a son to her because I check on her every day. It's you treating the janitor like a human being when everyone else looks right through him." The next morning, Marcus woke on a pull-out couch feeling more rested than he had in months. The apartment was quieter. Carlos had already left for his day shift, and Sophia was at school. There was a note on the coffee table: "Help yourself to anything in the fridge. We'll figure out the next steps when I get home." See, Marcus spent the day walking through Queens, seeing the city from ground level for the first time in years. He watched kids playing in small parks, elderly men playing dominoes on stoops, mothers pushing strollers while talking in a dozen different languages. Life happening at human scale, without the insulation of wealth and privilege. When Carlos returned that evening, he found Marcus in the kitchen, attempting to recreate the soup recipe. "Not bad," Carlos said, tasting the result. "Needs more cumin." "Carlos," Marcus said, setting down his spoon. "I can't keep imposing on you like this. You've already done more than stop." Carlos held up a hand. "You know what you're going to do? You're going to help me start something." "Start what?" Carlos's eyes lit up with an idea that had clearly been percolating all day. "A cleaning business. A real one. I got 6 guys I work with who are as good as any corporate team, but they're stuck in these big company contracts that pay nothing and treat them worse. We start our own company, do it right, pay fair wages, treat people with respect, Build something that matters. Marcus felt something stir in his chest, to a feeling he hadn't experienced since he was young and hungry and building his first business from nothing. I don't have any money to invest. But you got something better. You know how business works, how to talk to clients, how to structure deals, how to manage growth. And you know what it's like to be knocked down. Carlos grinned. Plus, you make pretty decent soup. 6 months later, Wellington Rodriguez Cleaning Services occupied a small office in Long Island City, serving 37 clients across Manhattan and Queens. Marcus had traded his Armani suits for khakis and polo shirts, his corner office for a desk squeezed between Carlos's and the supplely closet. He'd never been happier. The federal investigation had indeed cleared him of criminal charges, though civil lawsuits would follow him for years. He lived in a studio apartment now, rode the subway, shopped at the same grocery store as everyone else. His old friends had vanished like morning mist. But he'd found something better: the solid friendship of people who judged him by his character rather than his bank balance. Sophia stopped by the office after school sometimes, updating them on her college preparations. She'd insisted on changing her major to business, inspired by watching Marcus and her father build something from scratch. I want to learn how to help people build things that matter, she'd explained. On a rainy Tuesday evening, almost exactly a year after that night in the corner office, Marcus was locking up when his phone rang. The caller ID showed a name he hadn't seen in months: his former CFO, recently released from federal prison. "Marcus, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for everything, for destroying what you built, for destroying your life." Marcus looked out at the rain, remembering another stormy night and a janitor who'd refused to leave a man behind. "You didn't destroy my life, David. You ended one life so I could start living another." Sometimes the best thing that can happen to us is losing everything we thought we needed. When he hung up, Carlos was standing in the doorway with 2 cups of coffee and his familiar knowing smile. "Good news?" he asked. Marcus accepted the coffee gratefully, warmth spreading through his chest that had nothing to do with the temperature of the drink. "The best news, I just realized I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing the city clean for another day of possibilities.